Hello everyone. I will make the other video for the rest of the signs for as a yearly reading very soon. But I felt compelled, maybe it was herself, um, to talk about my Santa, la Nuestra Santisima Muerte. Here she is. Here's my personal, the first image I bought of her. Let me get this out of the way. Oh, it's wrapped around her head. Okay, well, I'll just leave it right there. So this is her. She goes by many names. La Nuestra Santisima Muerte is something I call her amongst a bunch of other devotees of hers. And what it translates in English is Our Lady of the Most Holy Death. She also goes by just Santisima Muerte. Place her right here. That way she can still be there. Okay, so now I kind of want to show her feature right there too, so you'll see my face a little bit. So I'll just start off just explaining who she is. Santa Muerte is another name she goes by the way. She is a female entity of death. But it's not as sinister as you think. She comes from Mexico. There's a bunch of different origin stories about her, but basically she is a blend of a goddess. One of them is going to be a goddess from Mexica, Aztec mythology, the pantheon relating to that culture. We had her name would have been one of her names would have been Meteca Sawato, in that's from the Nahuali language, translating to Lady of the Dead. And in that particular aspect of her, her origin story goes back to where she was sacrificed as an offering to the gods as a infant, a child, and from then on, she transformed into the mother of the dead. Her role was to oversee the festivities and the any religious, spiritual ceremonies and rites and whatnot pertaining to the dead. So around Dia de los Muertos, it wasn't always known as Dia de los Muertos, but it's called something else, or something similar to what we know today as Dia de los Muertos. Mind you, that Dia de los Muertos is pretty much a modern twist on what they do in Mexico. I kind of use them interchangeably, but for the sake of being linguistically, dialectically correct, I'll just say Mexico. It mostly started over here in East Los Angeles during the 70s. Dia de los Muertos as we know it. There's a documentary on it on KCET. I think you could look it up. It's pretty interesting, and it's mostly like this. It was like an art movement kind of, but the Dia de los Muertos, what we know today, is way different from what we know, what they did in pre Spaniard, pre Hispanic, pre Columbian times. So it's very different, but some of the same aspects and elements are going to be there about remembering the dead, venerating and honoring your ancestors and the dead and whatnot. So her role is to hold over the festivities and to watch over our ancestors' bones and the dead, take care of them basically. She guarded the bones. Her role came out into is pretty well known in the mythology of how how humans were born, in which she didn't really want to give over the bones over to Quetzalcoatl. I told that in a other video. So she's a blend of that, and she represents. She also reminisces very closely to the Grim Reaper of Europe. The Spaniards had their Grim Reaper, which they called La Parca, and you'll see it with the scythe and the robes and everything like that. Um, what they tried when the Spaniards tried to come to eradicate um, basically the paganism over here, um, the already established religion and spiritual practices of this land, um, they try to eradicate the indigenous beliefs, but obviously you can't eradicate and change everyone. So a lot had to go in hiding. Um, Tonantzin Coatlicue got uh, changed into Our Lady of Guadalupe. Um, in order to still practice, I mean, you see this in other religions like Santeria and Ifa and Kundamble and whatnot, in order to survive, you know. Um, so she was a blending of the two of the Grim Reaper and um, Meteca Sawato. She does have some legends out there where she has appeared to people. One of them being like an apparition of her was seen after she came up to a woman and told her, healed her son by recommending not to get too clingy and too overprotective about her son. And that's one of the local legends. She's very well in the known in a town called Tepito in Mexico. It's a very rough area in Mexico. One of the many spots in Mexico. That's going to be a very rough neighborhood. But I want to say her name is Carmen. I don't take my word on that, but she was the one who made it most popular in the early 2000s, to where she became Santa became very, very well known from then on. Um, she started to make public shrines in front of her. She had a public shrine in front of her home, and a lot of devotees and people who venerate her go make offerings and prayers, and where they had like masses. I'm not sure if they do that now since of the COVID-19. I know her son was the father, the priest who was the minister to all of that, but he's no longer alive. So why do you pray? Why do we pray to death? Um, she's not an official saint. She's not like Saint Barbara. She's not like Our Lady of Guadalupe. She's not like all the other canonized saints, because the church doesn't recognize death as being something to be praying to, mostly because Christ overcame death by the act of resurrection. Um, and uh, a lot of the occultism that happens in the cult of Santa Muerte, the church doesn't accept. They right away shun it away. But um, she's prayed to um, because she doesn't discriminate over anybody. She's very accepting of everyone. And it's also tying into, I believe it's tying to more of a philosophy too, because death does treat everybody equal. I mean, if you look at the COVID-19, there's no discrimination about people who can get it. So that's who she. That's why she's being petitioned for. She's very popular with the LGBTQ community, and especially the trans community. They have a big. She has a big following over in New York, amongst the trans community. Um, Even to the point of a priesthood being now being incorporated into the cult of Santa Muerte. I was told also in Chicago as well, because there's a big Hispanic community over there. I didn't know that, but I've never really been out to Chicago, so I can't really speak on that experience. But over here in East Los Angeles, she's pretty big too. There's even a basilica to Santa Muerte. Um, she's pretty big. I live around Whittier Boulevard in East Los Angeles, and as you know, in the San Gabriel Valley, this used to be part of Mexico at one time. So yeah, she's very popular. Um, she has patronage over people who are weird and misfits and outcast. Uh, Most uh, notoriously known as she the narcos who do drug trafficking. They venerate her a lot. She's mostly petitioned for that because so they can get their deliveries and their merchandise across the border without being caught. So that's why she's being venerated and petitioned by narcos. Why narcos? Because, like I said earlier, she doesn't discriminate against anyone. She's very welcoming to anyone who wants to venerate or be devoted to her. Very openly very accepting open arms. Um, Amongst other saints, which I some of my experience, I kind of felt a little weird because it's like you're praying to someone that they really don't. It's like that saying, um, like, oh, I'll tolerate you because of this. That's kind of the feeling I have in my experience with some working with some of the santos. Um, and there's that disconnection. So, if you have that kind of problem, it's very relatable. Um, we have that in everyday life anyway. So it's the same in spirit world. If you have a hard time, maybe she'd be the one you want to get to know a little bit more better. Um, so yeah, brujos, why? Because they're not accepted by the norm. Um, you could be any race, any religion, any sex, whether you're going trans or you're male, female, she doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Um, and she really is. She's really petitioned for anything, really. Usually when people have no resort or where they tried everything and everything else fails, she is the one to go to amongst San Judas. Um, that'd be St. Jude. is another popular saint in Mexico, having patronage over the Mexican people, and Our Lady of Guadalupe. But she is respected and feared. The fear part only because of the media. So, if you're reading a bunch of things about her being evil, she's not really evil. If anything, she's very neutral. Um, she is very neutral. She's not good. She's not evil. She's just an entity, and depending on how you operate, what your relationship is with her, kind of dictates what you're to be getting, basically. Um, Now, saying that, she is her own entity. Um, there's similarities with other goddesses from other cultures, but I wouldn't say she comes from this goddess. She's her own thing, and but some things you would see in common with other goddesses would be the owl with Athena. Um, the scales would probably be Ma'at from the Egyptian pantheon. Um, we'll get into her other attributes too, but mainly that's pretty much it. There is another saint in I want to say Peru or Guatemala, one of those places. I think it's Peru, and it's a male um, entity of death. His name is San La Muerte, and it's easy to confuse them both, but it's very different in the offerings and the prayers, and even the depiction of the saint itself. There's other ones too that I can't really think of, but if you look it up on Wikipedia, they go more in depth into that. But I want to talk about my own experience with her and what I could recommend. Now, I started off with this version of her, La Nina Blanca, only because normally old school traditions will tell you to start off with the white version because it seemed to be her more neutralized form and her more calmer aspects. This aspect I always felt is very motherly, very kind. Just hold her like that. She's a very kind aspect in this form. In the white form, she's petitioned in this form for protecting the home, bringing peace, especially if there's been fighting. She reconciles and brings calmness and tranquility into the household. Healing when you're sick, taking off the evil eye. So a lot of limpias she's petitioned in this form. A lot of curanderos will pray to this aspect of Santa Muerte more often, amongst other forms, which I'll get into. This form, I feel like you can also get into for more psychic ability as well. Curing addictions or getting rid of addictions. Amongst other things. Road opening would be another one. And that kind of thing, more spiritual insight. More go into your more common colors if you know what colors for either. You could kind of take it from there, really. Now I'll get into her symbols. So, her scythe. It's a scythe. It's an agricultural tool. Excuse me. It's an agricultural tool. We pray for. We use this in our prayers. This is to ward off evil. It's also used to uh, remove blockages, ward off evil, for protection, and for cleansing. It's also being prayed to so she could open roads for us. So it's kind of like her magic wand, her staff, really. Um, so you'll see a lot of petitions and spells incorporating a scythe-like object for those intentions. You have the scales over here. Scales are to now. There's a lot of injustice in different governments. It's not anything new to us, but especially in Mexico, where there's a lot of high crime rate from even, or the laws are not in favor most of the time for the victim. So that's why she's positioned on there too, especially with the scales of with the scales of justice, as is particularly called. And there's been miracles. There's been accounts of where she's been petitioned to wrong a right for a murderer that shouldn't have been released from jail. Or, there's other cases, um, rape or something like that. And she has answered those kind of petitions where that person is, either got executed or he's doing life in jail now. So she uses these for to. There's a lot of symbolism. I'll just jump right to it. Equality, healing, to bring balance, to bring order, um, to bring alignment and justice. Those are what the scales are for. Her mantle, her cloak, her robe is also mentioned in a lot of her prayers, as well as long as her litanies, to bring about protection. When you think about a mantle, kind of like you're wrapping a baby up in a blanket, it's to protect us from the cold, right? So um, that's what she uses her mantle to cover us for protection, wrapping us up in her embrace, kind of thing. Then we have this symbolism with the owl. There's a lot of folklore with owls in Mexico, um, amongst other attributes, but one of them being that witches, brujos and brujas, often change into the form of an owl in order to spy on somebody, keep an eye on somebody, or to get around, basically. Um, there's also the positive thing about the owl, about it relating to spiritual insight, psychic power, wisdom, knowledge, that kind of thing. It's kind of like acting as like her familiar, as like a guide. Um, Also, the negative part of it is when you're doing like curse work, like a death unto my enemies kind of working, um, to where if you hear the sound of an owl, that means death is approaching you, to you or to a loved one. There's different things, but that's basically the main part of what the lechuza means. You'll see a tribute with the globe. The globe means her dominion and power over all of life here on Earth. Um, we are all going at one day. We're all under her spell, basically, because at the end, she wins. She collects us, our souls, and takes us where we deserve to be. If you want to talk about it in a Christian Catholic sense, she's very Roman Catholic. Um, so that's what that symbolism means right here. The hourglass. is to mainly remind us how time is precious here on Earth and to live life to its fullest and don't waste your time on anything that doesn't really serve you no good. The coins here to represent, and the bones too. This relates to what I was talking about. Her ancient indigenous name, Metekasawato, meaning Lady of the Dead, and her role as Keeper of the Bones. So this is also seen with the Greek god Hades or Pluto in the Roman pantheon, same entity. Um, about since there he has a vast abundance in souls and dead bodies around. The earth, if you think the idea of the earth being abundant in how many people we've buried, that's where the idea of being abundant and rich comes from. So that's why the coins are there and the bones. The other attributes I have here are additions of my own, so they're not relating too much about the cultists, about Santa Muerte. But I have my own personal reasons. I don't want to go into that, but they're just little dormants. She likes to be adored and she loves jewelry. She comes in these 3 different forms. Her traditional forms and regarding her robe colors are going to be white, blanca. You have her in a black robe, la negra. That one's used for curses. It's also used for strong protection, revenge. It's also used for kicking addictions, like quitting them, casting out evil influences, stopping gossip, if anything, and psychic power too. And then we have the other version, her other aspect in her red robed form, her La Roja. And that one's popularly petitioned for love, romance, sex, attraction in general. So you can petition La Nina Roja in to help you attract money to you if you need to get a job, things of that nature. So if you have all 3 forms of her, pretty good to go. If you could only afford one image of her, I would go with this one, the Nina Blanca, and you could dress her up in different colored robes. So this one would be it. There are other colors out there. There are more modern adaptations to her, so you'll see her in purple, blue, green, yellow, amber, gold, pink, multicolored. You'll see one where she has the 3 traditional robes on all at one time, so it's a robe of red, white, and black. Sometimes just red and black. One where she's covered with money. Those are a little bit more of a modern adaptation. I think as the practice keeps on going more in time, there's going to be a little bit more tradition to actually to make it solid, I guess. But a lot of people make accounts to it. I'm no judge about it. Whatever works. If it works, it works, you know. I don't know what he's talking about. Anyhow, sorry, I have a friend messaging me. So, if you want to start off a relationship with her, I would start off with the white one. Things to account make now I can only talk about my experience with her in a Roman Catholic protocol. Is what I was taught. From I can't speak of the protocol in a indigenous practice protocol. I can't speak for that personally. I do respect it, um, but for what I know and what is mostly known by word of mouth and in books, you're going to see a lot of it is going to be Roman Catholic. If it doesn't work, you don't vibe for that, you're not comfortable with it, then I probably wouldn't suggest it. You could try it out, but you have to really be comfortable with the prayers. I know there's a lot of grudge and a lot of animosity, a lot of those uncomfortable feelings about organized religion as it is. For me, I am pagan. I consider myself a spiritual pagan. But in respect of her and her spiritual views, the protocol, I do them in a Roman Catholic way in respects to her. Um, it seems to be the most effective. You get a lot of more effective results when you do the Catholic protocol. Not that the pagan one doesn't do any more better. I just don't have any experience in that aspect of calling her, invoking her like that. But there's other people who can. I just won't be that source for that because I really don't have experience in that. Um, so traditional prayers would be the Nada, the Our Father, 3 Hail Marys. Um, I've been taught to say this one before you're talking or invoking any spirit within uh, folk Catholicism. Folk Catholicism, pertaining to the cultus of Santa Muerte, and other traditions like curanderismo and brujeria and whatnot would be Psalm 23. And then very important actually, would be the Amparo and the veneration to San Miguel, also known as Archangel Michael. Why? Because she is considered in full Catholicism an archangel of God. So, because she's the angel of death, her equal footing would be the other archangels, so Saint Gabriel, Saint Michael, Saint Raphael, Saint Uriel, amongst other ones. But she is amongst, in full Catholicism, uh, an archangel, so she serves God. So invoking a spirit of death in itself is going to be, it's going to tire out your body. You're going to be very vulnerable to for being in front of such a powerful entity. You're very vulnerable and you can weaken yourself spiritually, mentally, and physically. And you'll start to notice things around your life happening, like your loved ones who might be very vulnerable to her presence as well, especially babies and animals and kids in general. Um, you have to really think about who you're really inviting into your life. So, San Miguel, um, he'll pretty much keep you protected by kind of keeping her in check in a way. Not to be disrespectful to her, but especially more fiercer, more stronger forms, especially La Niña Negra and La Niña Roja. Um, her darker aspects, he definitely will protect you from her being so powerful. So she won't drain you out basically and weaken you. So he keeps her in check whenever she gets too angry or fed up, you know, um, with certain things. Depends on how you operate with her. But like I said, I haven't had any backlashes to where she gets to that point. That's all up to you. Like I said, she's very neutral. She's like electricity. It's the operator, you yourself, dictates what happens with you when you're petitioning her. I mean, you can piss her off. She's just like any other person. You can piss her off if you do something very offensive or you don't come on through. So definitely pray to St. Michael. Make an amparo. I'll talk an amparo in another video. And then you want to invoke her. Now there's a bunch of prayers that you could look up on the web. So rule of thumb, if you see the same thing from 3 different sites or books, that's pretty much going to be the consensus of what's true. She has her own invoking. She has her own litany, her own rosary, her own novenas. Always have water on the altar, along with light, candlelight. Clean your altar at least once a week. Change the water out at least once a week. Offerings you'll take would be pretty much anything, really. Most common that you'll see other than water and candlelight would be bread, pan dulce, bolillos, not really tortillas, but I guess tortillas. I have a funny memory about tortillas right now, but you'll also see tobacco, either in a cigar or in a cigarette form, weed, cannabis, marijuana. You'll see that as a popular offering too. Among tequila or beer, wine too, rum, any alcoholic beverage. The popular one's going to possibly be most likely going to be tequila. Another offering, flowers, any kind of flower. Most popular going to be roses. Another offering with candy. She loves sweets. She got a sweet tooth, I tell you. Especially for any kind of candy, really. She loves chocolate for sure. So Hershey Kisses, Abuelita chocolate. What else? Cobalt incense. Any kind of incense, really, I think she'll like. But most traditional is cobalt incense. Sage is another one for her. Cedar, romero, plants. It's going to be, other than flowers, it's going to be aloe vera, ruda, romero, and albahaca. What that translates to is basil, rosemary, and rue. Trying to think if there's other things I could. Other offerings. Apples. Fruits. Let's get into fruits. She'll not accept any kind of fruit, but most probably you're going to see apples. Red apples. I also heard grapes. She'll accept grapes. Pretty much anything, really. And in the form of sacrament offerings, you could do an offering of, say, a rosary to her. There's that little cloth thing. I forget the name of it. It's a little cloth, little amulet, talisman kind of handmade object of her on it. It's a piece of fabric. It kind of looks like a resguardo, but it's not. Most Catholics will wear it kind of like as a banner to, so when they die, it's kind of seen like, oh, this is my chosen child. He doesn't get to go to hell. This is a good person. kind of like that's kind of like the thinking of it. You can offer her that. You could offer her the sacrament of her litany, a novena. You could do offer her rosary beads. This being her rosary right over here. Oh, it's kind of stuck, but oh, there you go. You could give that to her. A blessing of some kind. Blah blah blah. Um, Other offerings, they're totally up to you. Of what you want, what offerings you want to make to her. But she'll just accept anything, really. As long as you come through your bargain, you'll be on her good side. If you don't come through, I she could take things back, um, and you'll find yourself in another mess. That's only happened to me a couple of times, but if you there's a prayer called the Act of Contrition to Santisima Muerte. Just like any relationship you have with a person, when you fuck up on something, if that person is nice enough to forgive you, she'll do the same for you. Um, Now, she's not meant for everybody. As much as she's accepting, there's some people that are not, they shouldn't work with an entity of death. Probably because they're more of a light worker. Um, there's some accounts that I've heard of, not with her particularly, but similar, like Hecate would be similar energy and vibe to Santa Marta, but yet very different. And I've heard of accounts where she could really stir your life somewhere where you don't want it to be. And you kind of have to get rid of that energy because you're not meant to be. And not all people are meant to work with Santa Marta. If you want to find out, I would make a contract with her first. And if you feel more uncomfortable during that time where she doesn't, especially if she doesn't come through, um, rip it up and, no hard feelings, If they're for statues, just give them off to someone who it might help them more better, or one who's more of a devotee who will take care of it for you. I think she'll understand. But if she has come through you, that's a lifelong relationship you have to keep up till the day you die. Not all situations are going to be as black and white as like I'm saying, but most of the time that's what happens. She's very loving. Um, she's been a miracle in my life for sure. Connecting to my roots, and I could not express more love that I have for Nuestra Santisima Muerte. I live and breathe her every day. She's not only about death, she's also about celebrating life, living life to its fullest, and really appreciating all your loved ones. And to make our most time on here on earth most precious. And she's very potent. She's done many miracles for me, especially times where I felt like I wasn't accepted amongst places or people. Whenever I come home to her and I pray to her, I feel immediately just a warm feeling of love from her all the time. Um, she recently came through today. Actually, I was praying for my dear friend Daz. If you watch this, Daz, hi, welcome back. Um, he was in a 2-week coma from COVID-19 just recently. And his mother was messaging me, keeping me updated on his status. Um, and she's like, he has his good days and bad days. He's like, but today he actually opened his eyes. And that was something I told her that I would pray to. I would put that into my novena to her. The first 9 days of the month are sacred to Santa Muerte. Um, so do lots of prayers and veneration and devotion time during that time. Especially her novena. I would do a novena for her the first 9 days of every month. That's what I do. If I can't do all 9 days, I try to do it all in one day, depending on the situation. Or, sometimes my health isn't that good. So sometimes I had to do it in one day. She understands. As long as you come through, that's all she asks for. And venerate and love her, devotion to her. That's all she asks. That's all she asks. She just wants to be loved. She wants to be loved. So that's also public testimony too.